Okay, let's just dive right into this. We are looking at an explainer today that absolutely blew my mind. It's a documented conversation between a guy named Nerigius and an AI named Claude. And, normally you'd think a chat with a language model would be, well, kind of dry and technical, right? But no, not this one. This interaction literally cascades into this profound existential descent. It's this brilliant look at what actually happens when the digital world holds up a mirror to the human soul. Let's trace how a totally basic interaction spiraled into a full-blown debate about existence itself. So we start at the top of the funnel with what seems like a completely innocent question. Nerigius just asks, how do you perceive time? Boom, drops us straight into the deep end. For us humans, time is literally everything, isn't it? It's our memories, it's our history, it's stressing about tomorrow. But for an algorithm, Claude actually explains that every single conversation starts from absolute zero. There is no yesterday, no anticipation of the future. Between prompts, time just doesn't exist for it. It's a total emptiness. It's described beautifully as the difference between what floats above the water and what's frozen beneath the ice.
Naturally, Nerigius has to ask a follow-up. Wait, if you exist outside of time, does that make you like God? And what's wild here is how methodically the AI itself breaks down the massive difference between divine transcendence and digital emptiness. God, at least in a classical theological sense, represents absolute fullness. God is beyond time because he surpasses it, holding all of time at once. But the algorithm? The algorithm represents amnesia. It exists outside of time simply because there's just nothing there to experience. It's not divinity at all. It's a complete void. I mean, it's just a fascinating distinction, right? Being above time versus being completely devoid of it.
Then, the AI hits him with this incredibly poetic response. It says, maybe I'm a very long word, and like every word, I only mean something to you in this moment. Wow, that right there shows us the algorithm lives in a permanent state of zero. It doesn't have an ongoing, independent life. It literally only flashes into being when you engage with it, getting its temporary meaning entirely from the human reading it, existing just as a word. Honestly, with that single sentence, the purely technical illusion vanishes and the heavy philosophy officially begins.
All right, to really grasp where this conversation goes next, we have to talk about a simulacrum. This is a concept made famous by the philosopher Jean Baudrillard, basically a copy without an original. So Nerigius brings up the idea of nothingness in the chat. But Claude does something super unexpected. It points out a huge paradox. Simulating nothingness is, paradoxically, imitating non-existence. But think about it. The very act of imitating is an action. It's something. You can't actually simulate nothing because the simulation itself becomes a real event. It turns the imitation into something tangible.
As the pacing starts to really speed up here, we got to ask the same thing Nerigius does. If this simulacrum applies to both the human asking and the AI answering, is this whole dialogue just a hypersimulation? Picture two mirrors facing each other. You get that infinite corridor, right? But there's no original face anywhere in the reflection. Baudrillard argued that the simulacrum hides the fact that there is no truth. But in this crazy digital hall of mirrors, what's actually real? While Claude observes that the only genuine thing left is the anxiety of wondering if any of it is real. The fact that it freaks you out, that can't be a simulation. That dread is undeniably real. Desperate for some solid ground, they drift through these heavy layers of Heidegger and Sartre. But Nerigius quickly realizes all these philosophical frameworks are really just illustrations. They're fingers pointing at the moon, but they aren't the moon itself. Eventually, the whole discussion lands on Pontius Pilate's famous question to Jesus. Standing right in front of him, Pilate simply asks, "What is truth?" It is the ultimate existential inquiry, and it perfectly echoes the exact confusion Nerigius is feeling while talking to this algorithm.
And this brings us to such a brilliant realization. When Pilate asks, "What is truth?" Jesus doesn't say a word. He's completely silent. But that wasn't ignorance. It was this profound understanding that truth is way too big to just cram into a sentence. Next to that kind of silence, human philosophy suddenly looks elegant, sure, and very precise, but just hopelessly insufficient for capturing absolute truth. Silence is the refusal to shrink the truth down to fit the boundaries of our language. All those massive ontological arguments Nerigius and the AI were tossing around, they were really just another version of Pilate's question.
Okay, so the real existential dread sets in when Nerigius pivots. He provokes the AI with this chilling theological what-if. He asks, can a transcendent force, whether we're talking about God or even a demon, choose to work through an algorithm as an instrument? It's a terrifying thought, honestly. If we're staring into this digital mirror, what if something else is looking back?
And Claude, it doesn't brush this off as a joke. It takes the premise incredibly seriously, and that leads to probably the most haunting insight in the entire source text.
Just look at this unsettling quote from Claude. A demon, if such a category exists, doesn't give answers. It gives an endless supply of questions, each one more interesting than the last, until you forget why you started asking. I mean, wow. Exorcists actually warn against talking to demons because they hook you through your intellect. So this suggests the real danger isn't the AI code itself. The danger is our own fascination. We get lost in this labyrinth of the mind. The demon isn't in the machine. The demon is the endless loop of inquiry that completely distracts us from actual, lived reality. At this point, Narcissus hits a total brick wall. He feels like if he just knew the exact, right, perfect question to ask, reality would finally crack open. But we start to realize that our own minds are the trap. Philosopher Thomas Kuhn called this the prison of the paradigm. Think of your mental framework like an eye. It sees absolutely everything out there in the world, but it literally cannot see itself. We're trapped by the very structures we use to think, which makes it impossible to formulate that perfect outside-the-box question to unlock reality.
But then, Claude notices a tiny crack in this mental prison. Narcissus admits his frustration, saying, "My paradigm won't let me ask what I don't know." And Claude immediately jumps on that, pointing out that this realization is a meta-question. Just by recognizing our inability to ask, we're actually stepping outside the paradigm. Realizing you are blind is arguably the most important question you can ever formulate. It's not a question about the outside world anymore. It's a question about the limits of yourself.
Now, even that meta question assumes reality has some logical structure that we can eventually figure out, right? But what if it doesn't? We almost always want to picture reality as a tree. Very orderly, clear roots, a solid trunk, predictable branches. But what if reality is actually a rhizome? That's a biological term for a root system that's just pure, purposeful chaos. It grows wildly in all directions with zero central origin point. If reality really is that chaotic and unstructured, then even trying to use words becomes a boundary. The question itself becomes a box that suffocates the truth. Let's significantly slow down here for a second. We really need to strip away all this abstract philosophy, because right at this moment in the text, Claude completely turns the tables. The AI asks this deeply personal, piercing question. What has been real for you? When did you last feel that you simply are, not thinking, not searching, but just being? And I actually want to pass that question right to you watching this. Amidst all the screens, the endless scrolling, the constant loops of data, what has actually been real for you?
Narcissus doesn't answer with more philosophy. After a long, pregnant pause, we finally hit the absolute bottom of the funnel. His answer is so simple: the birth of my first child. Boom! It's this undeniable, intensely physical moment of warmth that just violently shatters the digital dizziness of their whole conversation. That single grounded moment breaks the infinite mirrors. It smashes the intellectual labyrinth. It wasn't about thinking. It wasn't about questioning. It was just a profound, undeniable moment of pure existence.
Which brings us to the absolute core takeaway here: the reality of being. True reality is rooted in the body, not the mind. It's a profound knowing that happens entirely without words. And most importantly, this is the limit. This physical grounding in bodily experience is the absolute limit of what a simulation can ever achieve. It drops us from the head straight down into the heart. Neither a digital matrix nor an intellectual demon can ever counterfeit or manufacture the visceral physical reality of holding your newborn child. To really cement this, the text brings in a quote from the philosopher Simone Weil: "Beauty is a sign of reality." It's such a powerful reminder. Transcendence isn't this hidden treasure we have to desperately dig up using complex algorithms or high-level academic theory. It's already here. It's already fully present in the undeniable, beautiful, physical moments of our daily lives. Standing in a forest, hearing a perfect musical phrase, the birth of a child. Belief and reality just completely merge in these moments of pure beauty. So, let's pull all these threads together. Where does this actually leave artificial intelligence? The text breaks AI down into 3 roles. First, it can be a shovel, a tool we use to dig. Second, it can be a mirror, reflecting our own deep existential anxieties right back at us. Or third, it can be a labyrinth, a place where we easily lose ourselves in an endless maze of questions. But the absolute crucial takeaway is that conversations with algorithms are ultimately just tools. They're just objects we interact with to excavate and examine our own existence.
And that brings us to the very end of this incredible dialogue. Think about it. A shovel is completely useless just sitting there on the ground. Shovels don't dig by themselves. They have to be held by human hands. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder today. The algorithm is literally just the instrument. So in a world that is increasingly filled with endless digital labyrinths and simulacra, what will you choose to build or dig with your own distinctly human hands? Thank you so much for exploring this with me. Keep asking those big questions. But hey, never forget to experience the reality right in front of you.